You know what, Rod? They say diamonds are a girl's best friend. Would you agree with that?
I would say so, especially some women. They're very good friends, depending on the woman that's wearing them or the woman that knows about them. They're very good friends. So,
yeah. And today, folks, we're going to be talking about, well, one particular diamond you may or may not have heard of. It's called the Punch Jones diamond, which is probably Appalachia's most famous diamond, isn't it, Rod?
Yeah, it is, Steve. It's one of these things of, how could people be so lucky? That's the first question I'm kind of asking myself. How could people be so lucky to find a diamond? And then especially, of all places, as we're going to kind of tell in the story here, West Virginia. Because West Virginia is one of these places of where you don't typically think diamonds could ever exist. But we're going to tell you a little bit about a story that, they found something there. And it wasn't just any old piece of rock either, was it, Steve?
No, it wasn't. And it got started in 1928 with a friendly game of horseshoes between a man named Grover Jones, who was a school teacher up in Monroe County, West Virginia, and his son, Punch Jones, 12 years old at the time. Now, they were out throwing those horseshoes, and when little Punch goes over to get the horseshoe out of the pit, he spots something shiny down in there. Takes a look at it, pulls it out, and it's this real shiny, well, they thought it was a piece of quartz. So he showed it to his dad. They looked at it and said, well, that's really nice. Well, let's kind of keep it. It'd be a nice little souvenir of today. So they did, put it in a cigar box and put it out in the tool shed, what we'd now call, the yard barn, I suppose. And there it sat for about 13 years untouched until 1943. And then, Rod, something happened with it.
Yeah, something happened with it. Punch, who was a grown man at this time, decided, well, I think I'm just going to go and have this thing looked at. So he goes out, he gets it, and got to remind you, too, that Punch, of course, I already said he was a grown man. He's married, got a son also in this. But he drives down out of West Virginia to a place called Blacksburg, to Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University. For you other people out there, it's Virginia Tech, okay? Well, as he talks to somebody there at Virginia Tech, it's actually a professor, Roy Holden. Let me just specify that here. I mispronounced. It should be Roy. A respected geology professor there at Tech. He examines it. He looks at it, and really he's just astonished once he sees it because it's authenticated as a diamond, and it's the real thing. It's not just any kind of diamond. It's an alluvial diamond. That's what makes this thing so different. Few imperfections whatsoever, and gosh, that whole time, they were trying to figure out how in the world did this diamond get here? And the only thing that the professor felt like could have happened was, based upon its appearance, its size, it had formed somewhere in North Carolina or Virginia and had washed down the New River to Rich Creek for many centuries ago. But the big question was, how in the world, Steve, did something like that get into that horseshoe pit, and how not a part of Dr. Holden's analysis out of this whole thing?
We'll get to that here in a minute. Let's carry on with the story of what happened to the diamond. You see, at this point, it was World War II. Punch Jones was of draft age by now, and actually he was already in the Army when he took that rock up there to the professor and let him take a look at it. He had to be sent off to Camp Fannin for training down in Texas, and then shipped overseas to Europe to fight in World War II. Before he left, he decided we need to find a place to keep this big old rock safe. I guess he felt probably, don't you think, Rod, that since everybody at that point probably knew that he had a diamond, he didn't want to leave it at home with his wife and his son for fear that somebody might break in and take it and do some harm to him, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I would think.
Yeah. Well, he decided to send it to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington for safekeeping and to let them put it on display. He then shipped out to Europe, and that, folks, was the last time that Punch Jones saw the Punch Jones diamond, for he was killed in action in Europe in 1945, just about, weeks before the war ended. They brought him back, buried him in Monroe County with full military honors. The diamond then became the property of Punch's mom and dad, his wife, and his son Robert. So they owned 4 shares. Each of them had 1/4 of a share in this diamond. And they left it there at the Smithsonian, again for the safekeeping, for the next 20 years. And then they brought it back home, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, Steve. They brought it back, and I think they brought it back to the West Virginia State Fair in order for them to be able to display it. And after the fair was over, well, Grover decided to go and place it in a safe deposit box in the local bank. The First Valley National Bank of Rich Creek, Virginia is where it was. So in 1976, Grover passes away, and the ownership of the diamond then switches over to Grace and Robert Jones. But then by the time 1984 rolls around, this is already 8 years difference there going into 1984, the two of them finally decide, why do we even have this thing around here? Why have we been keeping it? Why have we been trying to keep this for so long? Let's see what we can do with it. So they finally decide to sell it to, of all things, Sotheby's in New York. That auction fetched somewhere around $75,000 of all things from an anonymous and very obviously wealthy attorney somewhere in East Asia. Kind of makes you want to scratch your head there and wonder about it. But here's the thing. Grace said before she died in 1992, she told a reporter, she said, I was glad to be rid of that rock. I wish they'd threw it in the New River. So, Steve, it had to be probably more than anything else. It was one of those things that came with a lot of, how can we say it, strings attached, so to speak, or, a little bit of a reputation. But, that's not the only thing that Grover and Grace Jones gained national attention from with this diamond as being a part of the family, was it, Steve?
No, it wasn't. But I do want to go back to that point about her wanting to throw this thing in the river.
Sure.
You hear stories when people win the lottery, how they, at first, they're like, oh, I'm excited. I can buy anything I want. I don't have to work anymore. I'm rich. I can do whatever I want. But before long, they're so aggravated by people wanting a piece of that money.
Right.
That they're like, I wished I'd never won the lottery. And I guess it was kind of like that with her. It's just like, this is just not worth all the aggravation that we had to go through with it. But yeah, Roger, you're right. There was something else that happened that made the Jones family very, very famous. In fact, it got them into Ripley's Believe It or Not. And it also got them a trip to the World's Fair and to go see President Franklin Roosevelt. What was that, you might say? Well, let's just say that Grover and Grace Jones were family people, as in a large family, as in they had 15 sons in a row, which set a world record. Now, they didn't stop there. They went on and they had a 16th son, and finally they had, I guess, the daughter they always wanted at number 17, and that's when they stopped having kids. So that's another thing that the Jones family was famous for, beyond having that Punch Jones diamond. It kind of reminds me of Coach Cummins up in Clintwood.
Yeah, Coach Cummins up in Clintwood, and he and his wife, Carolyn, and all the children, well, not all of them, but most of them, I think 6 of them at least, or several, born on February 20th, all on the same date. I think Coach Cummins even got to the point of where people kidded him and said, have y'all got this timed out? You got it figured out on a calendar, and how do you do all this stuff, where you're going to have this happen exactly on February 20th? It's just a coincidence out of it. But, they must have been, we didn't mention anything about this, but they must have been good, strong, Bible-believing people, because, they literally took that verse in the Bible, go forth and multiply. They did that very honestly, I think, didn't they, Steve?
Or they wanted a daughter real bad.
Yeah, that's true.
You put it
That's
that
true.
way.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the Punch Jones diamond, because you did
Okay.
bring up something a little while ago about how in the world that diamond got in the horseshoe pit to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are theories. Again, this professor said it probably formed over in North Carolina or Virginia, washed down the New River, somehow came up Rich Creek, and ended up there. How it got into the horseshoe pit, though, is the other question. And I've looked around at some of the forums, and some folks say that stories told around that area indicate that either maybe a bird had dropped it there, or that somebody had stolen the diamond or found the diamond and hid it there for safekeeping. And that's how Punch Jones found it. The thing is, this was like, it was a private lot, but it was used by a lot of people that lived in that area. And there were kids that would come down there and shoot marbles.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that one kid found this rock, this piece of quartz, quote unquote, which was the diamond, and used that as a marble when they played marbles, and then just forgot it and left it there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here it is too. This was back in the 40s also. There was probably a lot of speculation being done by this, and especially by the professor at Virginia Tech. And, looking at this whole thing, it had to come out of, somewhere around North Carolina and travel through Virginia. But as we were talking during the break, as we were getting ready to record, North Carolina is not a place known for diamonds, or at least so some people think. We got to kind of look at this from the possible, the impossible, however you want to look at it. It still found its way there some way. The professor maybe didn't know the whole story behind it. Who knows how it got there? But still, it's one for the record books in such a way because, gosh, what was this thing? I think the number of carats on it, I think when it was broken down, was somewhere in the neighborhood. Did we mention it? Something like 34.48 carats. 12 diamond-shaped faces on it, and each one of them had this unique, mesmerizing dance of lights inside of it. Wow, that's just the way it's described, just unreal how they described this thing. It must have been beautiful.
Oh, yeah, I'd say it was. I've seen pictures of it, but none of the pictures are,
right.
Well, they're copyrighted. So
Yeah.
we can't show those to you here on YouTube. But it really looks like a square more than your typical diamond.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just about a perfect rock, to be honest with you. Go Google it, and you'll probably find pictures of that. You can see for yourself about that. But a very interesting story, and something that just shows that Punch Jones was probably the luckiest little boy on the face of the earth. And folks, that is the story of the Punch Jones diamond. We hope you've enjoyed it. Be sure to go down below, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up if you like it, and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Till next we meet, y'all take care. So long, everybody.